Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out this mono-red Devotion deck as voted on by my supporters on Patreon, featuring Clive, Ifrit dominant as our commander. This 6 mana 5/5 when it enters lets us discard our hand, and then we get to draw cards equal to our devotion to red. So we get to add up all the red mana symbols among non-land permanents we control. That's our devotion. Clive also contributes to devotion, assuming it doesn't get removed in response to the ability, and then we often get to draw 5, 6, or even more extra cards, and then hopefully we can leverage those into a victory. Clive can also transform into Ifrit, a 9/9 that gets to start out by fighting an opposing creature, and then on the following chapters can make a bunch of extra mana and do some cool things, although we're not going to end up transforming Clive very often, so just the card advantage it provides when it enters is often what we're aiming for. So for that to work out, we do want to set up our devotion as much as possible. So if we take a look at the rest of the deck, we have very few instants and sorceries, since we want to have as many permanents that contribute towards our devotion as possible. Taking a look at our deck breakdown, we start out with our mana acceleration. Since we are trying to cast a 6 mana commander, to get our devotion up, we also need to cast a lot of spells to add to the board, so having extra mana to work with is useful. Sadly, most of these are just colorless artifacts, so they don't count towards our devotion, but there's still a few other permanents that can maybe discount our spells or generate treasure tokens, which can also help us out. Then our next section is our removal category. Most of these are either planeswalkers or creatures or maybe enchantments that can deal damage when they enter the battlefield, so we still get to increase our devotion while interacting with the opponent's game plan. Then we've got our random creature category. These are just good cards that help increase our red devotion. Then we've got plenty of card draw effects and card draw engines that can help us find more cards after we play Clive or to set up Clive in the first place. Especially enchantments are good, since those are harder for the opponent to interact with compared to creatures. And then speaking of enchantments, we also have a lot of effects that can double or sometimes even triple our damage output, so those are also quite deadly and often how we end up closing out the game. And then finally we've got our miscellaneous section, which includes a few more devotion payoffs with the different gods, as well as the Fanatic of Mogus, and we also have some non-basic land hate with Winter Moon and Blood Moon. Expedition Map also a way to find Nykthos, which is another payoff for increasing our devotion and can make a lot of extra mana for us. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana acceleration. Chromox can lead to some nice opening hands. There's a Ragavan, if it gets to connect, can make treasures. Magda, when it attacks, makes a treasure. And Wily Goblin when it enters. Then we also recently got Sunset Strike Master. Pretty unusual to just see a red mana creature like this, but I'll take it. And then our traditional mana artifacts with Arcane Signet, Cold Steel Heart, Guardian Idol, Mind Stone, Solar Transformer, and the Iron Crag. And then Ruby Medallion can discount all our red spells by 1. Now we do have some double red or triple red cards that won't necessarily get a discount from the medallion, but it's certainly still worth it. And then we've got a few artifacts that do contribute towards our devotion at 3 mana. Cursed Mirror can also maybe copy a creature that's on the battlefield. The Glittering Stockpile also makes a red devotion, and Altar of the Pantheon still contributes towards our devotion to red, so those are all quite useful. Heraldic Banner gets to pump up all our red creatures by 1. Worn Power Stone makes 2 mana if we get to untap with it. Defiler of Instinct can discount our red permanents by a red mana symbol, while also dealing damage when we play those permanents out. Fire Crystal is similar to Ruby Medallion, discounts our red spells by 1, also gives our creatures haste, and can also activate for 6 mana, making a token that's a copy of a creature we control. Can also be pretty fun. And then a Nyx Lotus, similar to Nykthos, a way to generate additional mana thanks to our devotion, so a great payoff if we can get it going. And then a Goldspan Dragon makes additional treasure tokens while also making them produce double the amount of mana. And finally, Cage Sun can double all our mana while also pumping up our red creatures. Then we've got our interaction, where I believe Lightning Bolt is the only instant or sorcery in the deck. We've got Chainsaw and Oath of Chandra dealing 3 while still adding 1 devotion. Ember Hauler can be sacrificed to deal 2 damage. Mogmob can be sacrificed to divide 3 damage. And then we can also make additional mana with Chandra, or we can use it to take out an opposing creature or generate additional card advantage. Koth can find extra mountains, another payoff for having lots of mountains in our mana base, and can also deal damage equal to the number of mountains we control. Fury can be cast for free if we exile a red card from our hand, and still pretty good to just cast for 5 mana. We've got Glorybringer, which can exert to deal 4 damage to a non-dragon creature. The Red Overlord we can also impend while it still contributes to Devotion no matter what, and Spiteful Banditry, the only real sweeper in the deck, can also generate additional treasure tokens afterwards. Then our random creature category has Ash Zealot, Incidental Graveyard Hate, the Needlehead punishes the opponent for drawing cards, Annex also a payoff for Devotion, leaving Satyr tokens behind. There's the Buccaneer, which can also maybe synergize with Clive's discard ability to deal additional damage. There's a Chain Whirler, which just adds 3 Devotion while also maybe clearing any 1-toughness creatures. The Enduring Courage to give creatures haste is pretty good. Also, if it gets removed, it still comes back in the form of an enchantment, which still adds 2 Devotion. Rekindling Phoenix, also difficult to remove if the opponent cannot exile it. And the Sunspine Lynx is more non-basic land hate, alongside Winter Moon, which makes the opponent only untap 1 non-basic land each turn, and Blood Moon, turning all non-basic lands into mountains, so those can be quite punishing in the right matchup. Then we've got our card draw effects with Fear of Missing Out, not too difficult to enable Delirium since we're discarding so many cards. Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, making that Shaman is also great if we get it going early. Seasoned Pyromancer, maybe for empty-handed, can just discard nothing and draw 2, similar to Clive. Count on Luck is 3 Devotion while providing an extra card each turn. The Dracosaur can also be very nice if we can keep it alive. There's Cavalier of Flame, can discard multiple cards when it enters and draw. And finally, Triple Triad is 3 Devotion and can also maybe let us play some cards from exile for free. Then we've got our damage altering effects with Torbrand, giving all red sources +2 damage basically. Twin Flame Tyrant doubles our damage, similar to the Gratuitous Violence, which only applies to damage dealt by our creatures. And then both Fiery Emancipation and City on Fire can triple our damage output, so those can also be quite devastating. And then finally, our miscellaneous section, we already mentioned Winter Moon and Blood Moon. Expedition Map, 1 to play, 2 to sacrifice, can find any land in our library. We'll often find Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, which, similar to our Nyx Lotus, can make mana based on our devotion to red. There's also Castle Embereth to maybe pump up all our creatures by 1, and Arena of Glory to maybe give some creatures haste. And then we also have some more devotion payoffs with the Fanatic of Mogis, dealing damage to each opponent equal to our devotion to red, especially with any of our damage doubling or tripling effects can be deadly. And then we've got Perforos, God of the Forge, dealing 2 whenever a creature enters, also maybe amplified by some of those damage modifiers. And finally, Perforos Bronze-Blooded, another way to give our creatures haste, and can maybe also cheat them onto the battlefield for 3 mana. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing Elenda, black-white life gain. What do we think of our hand? It's got potential. And this is a 4/4, so Chainsaw can't answer it. But maybe Strike Master ramps out a turn 3 Lotus. We've got a bunch of Devotion to go with it. So that could be fun. And then with Torbrand, I guess a Chainsaw could deal 5 damage instead. Never mind, Thoughtseize can now take whatever it wants and punch a hole in our plan. Takes our Strike Master, so now our hand's pretty slow. Although at least black-white is not going to have a wealth of answers to artifacts. Alright, Dark Ritual can set up a turn 2 Elenda. That's rough. So they're already super far ahead. At least the Sentinel's not going to trigger much, but Esper Sentinel sure is. So I could just chainsaw the Esper Sentinel first. Alright, just let them draw and play the Lotus anyway, and then next turn I can double spell more effectively. So now Elenda gets the 1 extra power and toughness, as well as menace. And they have a bunch of mana up, so they likely have instant speed removal for Torbrand. Still gotta try. Koth also deals 5. So yeah, I can either try Koth or Chainsaw. May as well Koth That way, I guess our opponent does get to trigger the Sentinel again. If I Chainsaw and they remove Thorbrand in response, then I don't get to finish off Elenda. So, kind of between a rock and a hard place. I guess we're okay trading Koth for a card and Elenda here. Sure. So this would be 7 damage if Thorbrand lives, but 5 is enough. Alright, Thorbrand lives, so could maybe hold off on attack. There's also a Rogue's Passage, but if that's their entire turn, I'm not too upset. Alright, they did have a go for the throat after all. So yeah, the Chainsaw play would not have worked. Now we do lose all our devotion, so Nyx Lotus doesn't look too exciting either. So ideally we top deck a high devotion card. Zorlin, probably what we're gonna Chainsaw now. Koth down. And a Pyromancer is not bad. So, play Chainsaw. Take out Zorlin. Can pay the 1. Pyromancer, while empty-handed, simply draws 2 cards, and then we still have 3 mana to work with. Which is enough to play Fable. Alright, so that turn went about as well as it could have. And then we still have Clive to draw a fresh hand. Which Enchanter blows up? Probably the Lotus? No, goes for Chainsaw. Probably the last one I would have chosen. So Fable, discard 2 mountains. And the Fire Crystal, okay. And a Goldspan, how much can we cast here? So Crystal leaves me with 2 mountains. So then I can still Clive afterwards. And with Goldspan and I guess the Shaman, we also get a bunch of treasures. So do I have enough to Crystal, play Goldspan, tapping the Lotus, and then, yeah, we can still Clive afterwards. That seems good. And then can I afford to pay the 1? I guess I didn't do the math there. If I pay the 1, yeah, with a discount we can afford to. Floating mana goes away, but we don't care. Goldspan will survive. So each treasure is 2 mana. I guess they do still have a mana up, so maybe they could remove the Goldspan before we go to the second main. And then with a discount from Crystal, play Clive with maximum devotion. Alright, that's quite satisfying. And then I hadn't played land for a turn yet. Can play a 1-mana Oath of Chandra. And deal with the Pilgrim. Okay. Expedition map can get Nykthos, which would give us even more mana. Blood Moon also looking pretty decent. We've got a 1-2 punch of Winter Moon and Blood Moon. Will we get a chance to moon our opponents? Clive back to the command zone, pretty easy to redeploy. And Fanatic of Mogis is the real payoff here. Alright, so map gets Nykthos. I'll pay the 1, I guess. Now I would shut off my own Nykthos if I play the Blood Moon. So I do have to be a little careful there. But yeah, I think we're good to activate. 7 mana. Just want to increase our devotion as much as possible. Play a Medallion, Cavalier for just 3 mana. Fear of missing out for 1, can convoke City on Fire, so what's the most beautiful way to end this? Maybe activate Reflection on Cavalier. That's also 3 more devotion. Don't think we'll need the Blood Moon. Alright, and then play Fear, discard lands. And then this makes a bunch of mana, so we can Needlehead into City on Fire, which I can convoke if I'd like. Although, honestly here, with the Cavaliers attacking, Goldspan making more mana, and Fear also enabling 2 attack steps, we have a lot of damage to spare. Play Fanatic, 22 damage, tripled by City on Fire, so don't even need to attack. Could also look into activating the Fire Crystal, could have also activated Reflection on Fanatic, so that could have triggered it an additional time. And then, yeah, with the extra attack from Fear, there's also a bunch of permutations, so maybe someone in the comments can do the math to see what maximum damage we could have dealt given the cards we drew. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Rocco Street Chef, and I kind of like this hand. We can quickly deploy Crow Mox into Mind Stone, and then maybe refuel our hand with a Seasoned Pyromancer, since we're going to be low on cards. And then hopefully take over with Clive. Opponent's got the Fireweaver, Cage Sun. How close are we to casting it? Still a few turns off. So maybe I don't bother keeping it. Alright, so next turn I just play an Iron Crag. And then turn after Clive, so we haven't found any additional devotion. Hopefully our draw step is kind to us. Knight of the Sweet's Revenge, also quite synergistic with Fireweaver and Rocco. More mana, but not any additional devotion here. Can maybe keep Mind Stone untapped and draw with it. And hit you for 3. I mean, Clive still gets to draw 4 here, assuming Pyromancer lives. Both decks developing their mana. And we'll see what Rocco maybe brings to the table. Yeah, I think I'll hang on to the Mind Stone. With Rocco exiling additional cards, I can probably make use of the mana. Alright, Prisoners takes out the banners, so... Rocco exiles a Worn Power Stone and a Cursed Mirror. So Cursed Mirror could copy Rocco as well, which lets me trigger the ability, or I can just get Clive down and go from there. Yeah, kind of like the Rocco idea. Also adds a little bit more devotion. Alternatively, I guess I could have copied the Pyromancer as well, in which case I maybe should have played land first. Let's go with Rocco. Decline. And then counter here. And then now we have even more mana to leverage Clive next turn, especially if we find more devotion of the opponent's Rocco. So 2 lands in exile, we exiled Mountain as well. All those tokens also make mana with Knight of the Sweet's Revenge, so that's scary. Opponent's just passing with a bunch of mana up. Alright, Chamberlain could be decent. Although, of course, if I cast it, our opponent knows to put the counter on the Llanowar Elves. I think it's still worthwhile, and then I'm not going to bother playing the land from exile, since we can just play one from hand. Yep. Opponent found a Soul Partition, which they can also maybe put to use. Play Clive. Should have tapped the Mind Stone. Opponent reprieves Clive, that's rough. Back to hand. Alright, so no great attacks this turn. At least our devotion's building up. But so is the opponent's mana, and they might be able to set up an infinite combo here. Partition Chain Whirlers, if I replay it, they trigger Rocco once again. And if I cast it for 5 mana, I guess I can still play Clive afterwards. Now Perforos and Fanatic. Interesting. So now with Fanatic, we do want to build up our devotion even more. So then, yeah, the problem is our opponent could just present lethal next turn if we're not careful, giving them all these food tokens. So going Chain Whirler plus Perforos may not be the move, although it does generate an indestructible blocker. And then next turn, Fanatic plus Clive. Let's try it. Chain Whirler would sweep up all the squirrels. So at least those aren't attacking with the Knight of Sweet's Revenge next turn. And I can still sack a food token. Opponent plays a Pilgrim. And makes more squirrels. Could see an all-out attack. No, opponent's still playing it conservatively. Sack my food. We'll decline the mountain. And then can play Fanatic into Clive. And hopefully get some more goodies. Opponent's at 6. Should have tapped the Mind Stone since we have some double red cards we could draw. I will discard my hand and draw 10. And I guess Transformer it is. Blood Moon could also do some damage. And Sunspine links with a couple non-basics. So we're not too far from lethal. Don't think we have a good attack. And our opponent still has a lot of food they can sacrifice. Discard 2 mountains. Now Skrelv. Triggers Curry Oak. This is bad. Opponent making a lot of mana. Does go for the activation now. So we only have one good blocker. This one can jump as well. And then we need to throw a few more creatures under the bus. This still has me taking 18. Are we transforming Clive next turn? Exile, then return. So it would have Summoning Sickness. Yeah, I guess we jump with Clive and keep the Devotion then. So now we have 9 going through. Fall to 6. Although next turn Skrelv is dangerous too. They only left themselves with 1 food token, so they can go back up to 10. Can we deal 10 damage of burn? We can certainly get close. So let's say we play the links, 1, 2, 3 non-basics. Then our opponent also can gain life, so they would have to gain life in response. Koth maybe deals with Rocco or Skrelv. Because yeah, I guess Skrelv making Scurryoak unblockable would be lethal next turn. But we also can look at attacking our opponent, since they only have the 1 squirrel on defense, of course. And Plaza of Heroes can also protect Skrelv for what it's worth. So let's start with links. It's probably a good starting point. Thanks to food and response. Trigger Perforos as well. Ash Zealot, another hasty creature. That triggers Perforos. Can play Blood Moon before we proceed. Or I can go Koth plus Ember Hauler. Well, let's just clear the squirrel. Opponent's got a Royal Treatment in response, so they still have a blocker. But yeah, Ember Hauler gets to deal 4 damage, 2 from entering, 2 more from the ability, and our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Vorinclex, so big green deck. Our hand's got some decent tools. Don't expect a ton of removal, outside of Vorinclex transforming, of course. So then we can build up our devotion, as well as our mana, with a discount from Defiler. Nyx Lotus could be a fun payoff too, although green's gonna have artifact removal. Also need to hit a few more land drops. Opponent's plotting a Trailblazer, so next turn they get to play it alongside Vorinclex. Alright, so what's my best play here? Defiler to discount some red spells next turn, or is it Nyx Lotus? And then next turn I have 5 mana. Can play Defiler, 1 mana left. Still gonna have to tap the Lotus first before I do anything else. Versus play Defiler now, then next turn I could play Annex and Enduring Courage. Yeah, that seems better. And then the Defiler triggering can also maybe deal with a Caryatid. Now they do still have 2 mana after they cast Vorinclex, thanks to the Caryatid. So possible they have a fight spell. It's gonna be a Caged Sun instead. So now Defiler unable to deal with Caryatid, but we drew a Lightning Bolt, which can deal with a Trailblazer instead. Alright, so play land. I guess I go Dracosaur plus Lightning Bolt, since that can also progress our mana development. And can just go face. Hit you for 4. Caryatid back to making 1 mana. If we can cast 2 red permanents next turn, I can finish it off, perhaps. Vorinclex also has reach, so it does get in the way of the Dracosaur. And the Wormcoil Engine, pretty nice leftover. especially against the red deck. Okay, so I think we're still building up our devotion to next turn refuel with Clive, if it's not too late. So play Medallion, can play a 1-mana Annex after I play Enduring Courage. And then I get to keep my treasure. Could have also dealt 2 damage to Vorinclex, so the Dracosaur gets to attack. But yeah, I think Annex is good to get in there. And then we have 9 power of first strike on defense, which is still pretty decent. Vorinclex transforms. And what did they hit? Defiler Vigor and Somberwald Sage, so it could have been worse. Defiler still pretty scary. The green counterpart to our Defiler of Instinct. But yeah, 9 power worth of first strike is still pretty good defensively. And Dracosaur finds Chainwhirler. Alright, so we can do a few things. I wish I had the Lotus in play now, of course. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 5. Yeah, I guess I can play Lotus and play all my Devotion cards. Then between Chainwhirler and Defiler, I could deal 4 to one thing. So I guess that's going to be Somberwald Sage. What happens next turn? 7 counters. Yeah, that's going to be rough. Bonehorde Dracosaur could attack, or we can leave it back on defense. Yeah, let me start by casting some spells. Could also maybe set up an attack if we're still threatening damage with Defiler or Ember Hauler. But yeah, might be better off playing defense and then just deal with the Somberwald. So yeah, I think that's it. And then play Lotus, and then next turn Clive gets to go off with Lotus, making a boatload of mana. Don't see any amazing attacks. I can maybe get in for 5, but then our opponent gets to hit me back for a lot more. So they make a 16-16 Trampler. Enduring Courage is fine to block, since it comes back and still provides 2 Devotion. I guess we have 12 power worth of first strike. Still not enough to block the Defiler all that well. And the opponent's going off with Augur of Autumn. I wish I would have been able to take that out instead, and now is up on Riel. Alright, that's just game doubling the Defiler's power and toughness. So, no real point in blocking here. GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Atraxa, so a matchup where we would like to find our non-basic land hate. This hand's too slow. Alright, I mean, no land hate, but a good amount of acceleration. So hopefully that's good enough. Opponent's got their own Halfling on 1. Wily Goblin into a turn 2 Nyx Lotus could be worth it. Although I guess the Strike Master still gets there if it doesn't get removed. So we'll take this approach. And if they do have removal, there's still Heraldic Banner. Opponent keeps on ramping with Uro. So at the moment, it's hard to tell if it's just a Super Friends deck, a Good Stuff deck, or a Poison deck. There's a lot of possibilities. But we'll start with Lotus. Gives us the most explosive play next turn. And then Fury, potentially an answer to Atraxa, whether we evoke it or not. Hope that Lotus survives. Alright, Ashiok could bounce it, but then they would lose Ashiok to the Strike Master, so they're going to bounce Strike Master instead. So Ashiok is on 2 loyalty, so now casting Fury could be the move, as it takes care of both of their permanents. What do we get rid of? Yeah, I guess I can evoke Fury and then tap Lotus for 2 mana while it's on the battlefield, which gives me 5 total at the very least. So I could go Banner into a 2-drop or play Torbrain. So maybe I don't need the Strike Master anymore. Prefer the Devotion from Wily Goblin. Alright, so how does this change our sequencing? Yeah, with a land, I mean, I still need to pitch Wily Goblin to play Fury in the first place, so it's possible ditching Banner was better. But yeah, let's say I evoke Fury, pitching Wily Goblin, this makes 2 mana, and then I can go Banner into Torbrain. Yeah, that's probably the play. So I'll go full control to make sure I can tap the Lotus while Fury's briefly on the battlefield. Two each. Fury's gone. Play Banner, play Torbrain. And then we're ready to cast Clive. If they remove Torbrain, my Devotion dwindles, and then we'll need another mana source before we can play Clive. Opponent goes Signet. Maybe he leaves up a counterspell. So yeah, it could be a Super Friends deck if they're running Ashiok, of course still just a good card. And Rift bounce Lotus, so with a land I can still play Clive. Now I guess we replay the Lotus. Perforos also an option, but I think the Lotus is going to be worth having. But yeah, I guess it's a good sign that they just had to cast a 2-mana Rift as opposed to overloading it. Still pretty far from escaping Uro. And now Dream Render. Luckily don't have any fetch lands that get punished by the ability. Graveyard is gone. And find Expedition map. So I can still play the map before playing Clive, so then next turn we can, I guess once we deal with Ashiok, tutor up the Nykthos. Although, yeah, they don't have double blue, but they could still have a different counterspell for Clive. If I activate map that doesn't work because of Ashiok, I could attack Ashiok first, I suppose. And then I could search up Nykthos and still have the mana to play Clive, so we at least hit our land drop for the turn. Or I could just pivot and play Perforos first, in case our opponent's keeping up like a wash away, which I also don't hate, since they've been pretty suspicious. Alright, Perforos resolves. It's going to be an end of turn Augury. Would not have been enough to save Ashiok, adding 1 more loyalty. So we do potentially untap with a lot of mana between Nykthos and Lotus. Opponent now escapes Uro, still has 2 mana up. So I don't think Clive is resolving, sadly. But we can try playing it on back-to-back turns. Alright, that actually resolved. Color me surprised. So I get to discard and draw. Finding lots of goodies, including a Winter Moon. Does punish my few non-basics here, but I'll accept. Can we cast a city on fire? I guess I can. Might want to bait with the Winter Moon first. Would be quite backbreaking with all their non-basics if it resolves. And then I can still convoke tapping Torbrain and Clive per Feroce attacks. And it's a must jump. Opponent did end up just getting a Plains here, no response yet. Does City on Fire resolve? It does. That's 21 damage coming your way. So I recommend blocking. Opponent agrees. Now this could still be a blowout if they have a Farewell to exile all my stuff. But I guess they don't get to untap all their lands, so they would need another untapped lands first. Which they have. And a Sunfall. Alright, so not quite as backbreaking as Farewell, still pretty good, dealing with our Indestructible God. And then we'll untap Nykthos. Glorybringer times 3 is pretty decent too. So play that before tapping any Nykthos or Lotus. A Lotus casts Fable, which adds another Devotion. Can we replay Clive? Not quite. So just play Transformer, hit for 15. And take it from there. Opponent now only has 4 mana available. And yeah, that'll do it. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the Gitrog Monster, which is a pretty powerful landfall deck. So, do we have a chance with this hand? Ramp out a Mog mob, that's not going to do much. Maybe take out some Mana Elves. Does provide 3 devotion for Clive. So then ramp, turn 3, can go Signet plus Mob. Turn 4 we can play Clive. Yeah, maybe it's not the worst. At least we've got a plan. Opponent's got Utopia Sprawl, so no Mana Elf for the mob to remove. Start with Cold Steel, so next turn we can double spell Signet and our 3 mana Goblin. But yeah, if our opponent can enact their game plan, they'll be drawing a lot of cards very soon. So it's going to be tough to keep up. 6 toughness, also not the easiest for our burn spells to get rid of. And a Diabolic Intent gets to tutor up. Maybe something to replay lands out of the graveyard, maybe a fetch land, who knows. There's also a few infinite combos you can set up with a Gitrog Monster, so maybe that's what they're aiming for. For now, Signet into Mob provides the most devotion. And pass it back. Yep, and there's a closet to replay fetch lanes. And yeah, they already had one in circulation, so there was no need to search it up. Could wait a turn to play Clive and build up our devotion some more first, which I don't hate. Just go Stockpile plus Buccaneer. Drawing 5 isn't bad, drawing 8 seems better. Opponent gets a Surveil land. So next turn they get to play Gitrog, but hopefully not too much afterwards. And make sure to put a stash counter on the stockpile end of turn. And Dread Presence can deal damage and gain life, or just draw extra cards. Well, if that's their whole turn, it's manageable. The mob can also maybe deal with the presence. But time for Clive, and I forgot to put a counter on the stockpile. Oh well. This will trigger the Buccaneer. And yeah, we found some goodies, although nothing I can cast right this second. Attack. And then I guess I can activate the Buccaneer still. Opponent takes it. And a land can maybe go. Yeah, maybe I should deal with the Dread Presence now. And then next turn we have options. Could also transform Clive. Lands in Graveyard are also good with Cavalier of Flame if it were to die at some point. And we get to trigger Buccaneer once again. And wow, our opponent scoops it up. I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Kenrith, 5-color, good stuff. So it would be a matchup where it's maybe worth mulliganing towards Winter Moon or Blood Moon. But this hand's still pretty decent, so I think we try it. And Nykthos also quite good. We get to build up our mana while building up our devotion. And then Clive hopefully resolves to refuel. Maybe still worth trying Magda first. Even if it trades for Baleful Strix and makes a treasure, that's okay by me. Then maybe the Goldspan gets to attack unopposed. Opponent brainstorming likely has a fetch land to follow that up. Yep. Alright, let's play a banner to further incentivize him to trade. And it also helps set up the Goldspan next turn. Don't think it's worth it to play Wily Goblin. Because yeah, with Goldspan next turn, it should be trivial to cast a Goblin alongside it. And then we've got 4 Devotion to set up maybe Clive with 6 total to draw 6. At least that's the hope. Hopefully our opponent taps out as opposed to keeping up interaction. Kiora. Draw to discard 2. So they would need a very specific counterspell to stop the Goldspan. The Strix Serenade comes to mind. And a Lightning Bolt can also come in handy. And Goldspan resolves. And gets to attack. And now I could maybe be convinced to play the Goblin in case something bad happens to the dragon. At least we get to increase our devotion, which is also helpful for Nykthos. And then no real need to take out Kiora until they fill the graveyard some more. Alright, opponent runs out Boseiju, still missing red mana. I'm surprised the 5-color deck has room for Spymaster's Vault in the mana base. And now Buried Alive. Alright, so opponent's setting up their graveyard, which would also set up Kiora, so I probably have to bolt it now. So opponent might be more of a Reanimator deck, which makes sense with the Troll being in there too. And Kenrith can reanimate stuff for 5 mana. Yeah, typically don't love my chances against a Reanimator deck, since there's not a lot a red deck can do to answer some of those 7 and 8 mana creatures. And the Priest can also be unearthed to bring back Body Double or Crocodile. So, yeah, not ideal. So go to Bolt Kiora. At least we don't have to face an 8/8 right now. And then any reason to play Clive before attacking? I guess I could find a way to give it haste, but there's not too many. So yeah, we'll attack first, see what's up. And then... may not be worth it to play the Transformer. Can always play it after Clive if they counter it. If they don't counter it, then we're good to go. And then... yeah, I guess I could keep Nykthos available. So I can still cast more spells after we resolve Clive, if we resolve it. So there's a bit of give and take here. Alright, it does resolve. Take action. And then now I could still play some other stuff out. Including Perforos. And I guess a Strike Master. Or I could save that for next turn in case there's a board wipe. So yeah, as it turns out, we did find a haste effect, although I'm not sure if we would have had the mana to play both in my first main phase, since we did rely on the treasure from Goldspan. But yeah, now we can also look into transforming Clive for 6 mana. Thanks to Perforos, Ifrit will have haste. So we'll see what happens. But that was a pretty good sequence for us. Our opponent can reanimate the crocodile, or body double, which turns into the crocodile. So then we're facing a bunch of stab wounds. Still beatable. Alright, body double it is. So next turn they could get another crocodile if they want. Lose 6 to the stab wounds. And Sunspine Link's also a good way to punish those non-basic lands. Although I would like to transform Clive, but we can probably play the Lynx first. Could even activate Perforos to put it in play and save a mana. The Strike Master makes a mana right away, so almost pays for itself. I guess it does with Nykthos involved. And then I can still transform Clive. Come back as a 9/9, fight the croc. And attack for a lot of damage. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Lonis, Cryptozoologist. A deck making lots of tokens. This hand seems a little slow. This one I can try. With Chandra speeding up casting Clive. Maybe he can play a City on Fire first. Don't expect Ash Zealot's Graveyard Hate ability to be super relevant. But still, 2 mana, 2/2 First Strike Haste. Used to be a rare, so we got a downgrade in Pioneer Masters. Now we can play Fable on 3. Medallion's also quite promising. Still go for Fable, maybe discarding the stockpile next turn in the hopes of hitting our land drop. And if Shaman attacks, we have 4 mana for Chandra as well. Ideally, enough mana to play Medallion and Chandra. But we'll see. Opponent gaining a life with the Gala Greeters. Usually seed making treasures, but our opponent can trigger it twice. Time you also very synergistic with Lonis. Alright, so maybe City on Fire is a little bit more ambitious than just a gratuitous violence. So we'll try this setup. Found the land. So can attack with the Shaman, Medallion, and then still Chandra. And I'll keep the Zealot to protect Chandra, I think. Haven't decided yet what to do with Chandra, but I should probably minus and just deal with Tamio. Since, yeah, that's a pretty scary combination, getting to investigate each turn. Opponent's got Uro. I guess the Ash Zealot can maybe punish it from coming back, dealing a whole 3 damage as their opponent gains 3 and draws a card. Yeah, hate cards used to be a little bit more subtle back in the day. Thoughtcast, draw 2 for 1 mana. Anything else? Nope, we get to untap. Alright, so probably want to get the Gratuitous Violence in play before deploying Clive. Chandra makes mana. And then we still have some decent options. So I play Alter, play Violence. And then now we get double the damage, so it's probably worth it to attack. And then next turn Clive with potentially 10 Devotion if all my permanents stay in play. That might be ambitious. Hopefully no mass bounce spells here. A Reverse Rebuke comes to mind. Opponent could maybe protect themselves with a One Ring. Those are the scarier cards. Dockhand was not on my list of threats. Channeler can bounce something. It's gonna bounce the Violence. Might have enough mana to play it alongside Clive next turn, if Chandra survives. Did lose our Reflection. And Uro escapes, triggering Ash Zealot. Alright, so we still definitely have a game on our hands. Alright, Castle Embereth helps. So if I were to make mana here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so yeah, we can play Violence into Clive and then take it from there. Question is, do I give Clive haste with the Arena? Because we are threatening a lot of damage.
Yup, you're going down.
So I can maybe use the Arena and then not use both threat sources, so I can still give another creature haste, although I won't have a lot of mana left, to be fair. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, at most I can play a 1-drop, so probably not worth it then. Can just keep Clive on defense, or maybe play a creature second main after attacking with the Shaman, if we deem that to be worth it. But yeah, draw 10, not too bad. So if I attack, I can still cast a Signet. I think we'll pass. Discard a few mountains. Maybe a Transformer. And then Torbran, Emancipation, more ways to increase our damage output. Muldrifter, gonna draw. Yeah, not sure if they can leverage those clue tokens into a win here. Muldrifter follows Muldrifter, that's nice. Can probably chump with Ash Zealot since we don't need the Devotion all that much. Could also, I suppose, double block. What are the odds that we transform Clive next turn? With this Perforos it would have haste. So, could also double block. And then with Violence, we get to take out Uro. Chandra dealing damage with a +1 could also be quite deadly under the right circumstances, and now a Spiteful Banditry. Chandra doesn't get doubled by the violence, does get doubled by Emancipation and or Torbrain, however. Opponent does have potential counterspells up. So maybe kick things off with Torbrain. Do I need to give it haste? Yeah, it's an option since we have the Banditry as well. So we'll play it, Torbrain with haste. See if that resolves. Opponent's gonna memory lapse it. So I could still find it with Chandra and then replay it for 3 mana. And then Banditry afterwards. I don't hit that line. Even though it may not be optimal here. Opponent's gonna activate the Cryptozoologist in response. So then they get to steal my Torbrain, is that it? They do. And then Winter Moon still seems decent to resolve. Alright, and then I could still Banditry for 2, which wipes most of the opponent's board. And then Clive would be hitting for 10, so that's probably a worthwhile attack. Alright, so decent turn all around. Opponent doesn't get to take out Chandra on the way back. Ooh, and a Brazen Borrower bounces Winter Moon, so they do get to untap their lands after all. Does complicate matters a little bit. Now Synthesizer to build up an army of constructs. And Uro's back once again. Akal Pakal. Torbrain deals with Chandra. But our opponent's tapped out. So if we can deal 11 damage here, that's all that's necessary. No hasty creature from Arena. So what if we transform Clive, then we don't get to attack with it. Can deal with Uro that way. And that's 6 mana, and then I could still play Winter Moon at the very least. That's decent. No creatures to go with Perforos. So yeah, a bit of an awkward hand. I think just going Winter Moon Transform is fine. Could also attack first. They probably have to block. And then I can just replay Clive if I'd like. Maybe they end up jumping, which is fine too. But yeah, opponent trades for Uro. Or jumps with Akal. Those are the options. Because if they jump with Akal, then I could just second main transform, so then maybe they're better off trading for Uro. And if they didn't block with Cancel, we had lethal. So trade happens, back to the command zone. Get a treasure. And then definitely want to play Winter Moon. Can just go Fire Emancipation alongside Arcane Signets and call it a day. Any value in playing the Power Stone, I guess, in case they bounce my treasures somehow. And then next turn we get to untap, play Clive, and hopefully find more action. So our opponent's got an island, 2 forests, and then 1 non-basic gets to untap. Ooh, Statuary, that's a problem. They can now tap their artifacts for Improvise. Thassa can flicker Akal. but they are shields down now. I'll untap my arena. And Ember Hauler. So let's see here, if a creature would deal damage to a permanent or player deals double, with Emancipation it deals triple that damage. So, starts adding up. I'll just go Ember Hauler, play Clive, and then we'll see if activating Ember Hauler's lethal already. Could also give stuff haste, to be fair. Although we're probably not punching past both of their blockers. And I think we can find something more exciting than Perforos. Discard my hand, draw 13, and yeah, Lightning Bolt is probably game here. Tripled by Emancipation, and then Ember Hauler can sacrifice to do the rest. Ooh, Flare of Denial. Free counterspell. That might keep them alive. So how much damage is Ember Hauler exactly? Because these are a bunch of replacement effects. Since the opponent is the one being dealt damage, they get to choose the order in which they're applied. But since these are just ×2 and ×3 damage, I don't think the order matters. It's not like Torbran is involved. So then 2 damage tripled by Emancipation is 6, doubled by Violence is still 12. So this should just be lethal here. And there we have it. Awesome. Alright, so we got to see this monored Devotion deck in action. And yeah, Clive is a pretty nice curve topper if you can empty your hands and set up your Devotion for it. Does take a while to get going, so it's not the fastest deck in the format, also not the most competitive, but a lot of fun if you can play slightly longer games where you get to see Clive shine. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.